I understand completely these are not going to be in the same price range. They're not going to be in the same class of knives. This is definitely a premium knife. This is definitely a more budget conscious knife. I get that, but a lot of people who are seriously into cooking, they normally try to decide if they want to get a Fibrox knife or if they want to get a higher end knife. And a lot of them have asked me to make this comparison set of videos to help people understand that and help them make their decision. So I've made a video of this with a carving knife already, but I wanted to compare it to the Victorinox slicing knife as well, just because these are both more in line. They're a bit more comparable to each other than this and the carving knife. So let's discuss the similarities they're going to be having. They're both sharp. They're both knives. They both have similar cutting angles, 16 degrees, 15 degrees. That's pretty much where the similarities are going to end. Oh, they both have lifetime warranties. There you go. Differences. This is a handmade forged knife in Japan. This is a machine-made stamped knife in Switzerland. Okay. Full tang. And what a lot of people don't understand and don't realize is that even though Victorinox makes high-quality knives, they're not full tang. The tang ends about right here in the knife, and the handle is formed around it. What that means is if you're abusing your knife, if you're using it in a harsh condition, there is a pretty solid possibility the blade's going to break and hit you in the face, which you probably don't want to have happen. Sort of a moot point unless you cut lots of melons regularly, just because you shouldn't be abusing your knife anyway. Next difference. The Shuns are made with VG10 steel. What that means is it's using the gold standard of steel for knives. The Victorinox do not use VG10 steel. They use a slightly similar high quality steel that's a little bit softer. End result is this is 58 hardness, that's 61 hardness. There are pros and cons to both sides. The pros of a harder knife are that since it's harder, as you cut, you're going to naturally be bending it little by little just from the act of cutting. A harder steel is going to be more resilient to that bending. The flip side is that if you're abusing your knife, if you're throwing it into the sink, if you're putting it in a dishwasher, if you're using glass cutting boards, things like that, the energy you're putting into the metal of the blade by whacking it on a table or throwing it into the sink, it needs to be dissipated somehow. With a harder knife, that energy can't be used to bend the steel. So what it does instead is it chips off little chunks of steel. Little itty bitty little serrations are created. Every once in a while you hear someone complain about how they have a Shun knife and it has little chips in it and they say Shun knives are horrible. That's caused by user error, it's not caused by the knife, ignore them. There is a benefit though, like I said, to having the softer knife. If you work in a kitchen environment that's, let's say, professional, and you do throw knives in the sink, you do throw knives in the dishwasher, you have to cut things on plates, or you end up sort of abusing your knife because you want to get the food out to the customer as fast as possible, Victorinox knives are phenomenal for that purpose. Otherwise, a harder steel is always going to be preferred at your house. Now let's discuss these two knives. They're both relatively similar in length. This is a little bit longer, which means you get a little bit extra length to actually be able to cut through without having to saw back and forth and create those weird little striations that make the meat look a little bit gross. And also, frankly, the Granton edge on this is going to be a lot better for cutting through meat without getting the chance of it getting stuck. I prefer this knife for slicing off the bat. But in terms of Shun versus Victorinox, this is VG10 steel, like I've said. But on top of that, since this is stamped steel, what's going to happen is this is just one solid piece of metal. That's it. This is VG10 that has 32 layers of Damascus steel wrapped around it, essentially, of stainless steel wrapped around it. And what that does is it creates, like I said, this gorgeous Damascus pattern on the bottom half of the knife, which does two things. Number one, it looks great. But number two, it makes it very, very resilient to staining, to pitting from acids, to rust, things like that, just because it has so many layers of stainless steel on it. Next thing, as you probably noticed, that has the Granton edge. This has the hammered finish. Unfortunately, the hammered finish is sort of where you don't want it to be. It's on the top end of the knife. You want it to be as close to the blade as possible because that's where the vacuum is going to be forming as you're actually cutting. That's where things are going to stick. The sticking you don't want to happen while you're cutting. You don't want it to not stick when it's up there. And that's why these are so close to the cutting edge, to stop it from sticking as you're cutting. I prefer this again. I think that a slicing knife should be used for slicing in the kitchen and you bring the meat out afterwards. Or you can use this at a dinner party on the table. But I really don't see the purpose of having a nice knife like this unless you want to use it at the table to sort of show off to your guests. Yes, it's a nice knife. Yes, it's hard. This is going to be a far superior knife to cutting things like roast, to cutting things like turkey, chicken, stuff like that. Because the granite edge, whoa, I almost cut my finger. No, I definitely did cut my finger. Wow, that was poor knife skills. Luckily, it was just the tip, just the outer layer of skin. But like I said, the granite edge is very close to the blade, which means there's no vacuum that's formed. And it's a much longer knife, and it's a flatter profile. It's not as thick as this knife is, so there's less surface area to stick to. This is going to be a much better knife at giving you nice clean cuts all the way down without needing to saw through. And what I would actually suggest is probably getting a 12-inch or a 14-inch knife. It's going to be like that long. It's going to look like a machete, but it gives you more opportunity to go straight through something all the way down without actually needing to go forward again and giving those little striations in the meat that make it look less presentable. I'm going to leave links down below. If you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know. If you have any comments, feel free to let me know. But otherwise, I will talk to you very soon.